In this video, I'm going to show you how to set your budget, how to know how much to spend on YouTube ads specifically for a high ticket product or service. So that's the example that I'm going to use in this video is high ticket products and services, because how you do your YouTube ad strategy and how much you spend will depend on what the product is. So, and it'll depend on what the funnel is. So the funnel that I'm going to be using, so I'm going to assume that you're using a funnel that's like the funnel that I use for myself, which is you drive somebody from the ad to a opt-in form either with a lead magnet, or it's just an opt-in form to get more information about your product or service, at which point the person is called a lead, and then some of those leads you're going to drive to apply to work with you, to apply for your high ticket product or service. And then those people are going to fill out an application and book a call. And then when they show up on the call, you're going to sell them over the phone or over Zoom or something like that. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Now, how much you should budget depends on a lot of different factors, right? I can't just give you a number. I can't just say, oh, you should budget $1,000 a month. Like, it's going to be very different for different kinds of businesses. And I'm going to show you why that is. And I'm also going to show you how to understand this, like how to know how much you should budget specifically for your business. So let's put in some numbers here. So I created this little calculator that basically shows you the performance based on some assumptions. So the first assumption is, what is our cost per lead? So a typical cost per lead for me is $10, like $10 cost per lead. And then from there, I want to look at conversion rates, right? So like of the people that become leads, that is of the people that opt into my initial opt-in form, how many of them apply and book a call? Like what percentage of those people apply and book a call? So a good target here for booked calls is 10%. Again, this is about what I'm getting for myself. And then of those people who book a call, not everybody's going to show up. It'd be nice if everybody would show up, if like people did the things that they said they were going to do. That would be cool in a perfect world, but most of us know that it doesn't work like that in the real world. So you're going to have a certain percent that show up. So a pretty normal show rate is 70%. So we'll put 70% in here. And notice what's happening here is that it's populating the cost per. So if a lead costs $10 to get a lead, and 10% of those leads will end up booking calls, that means that we're spending $100 per booked call, right? $100 in ad spend per booked call. And because not all of those calls are showing up, we're spending a little bit more, in this case, $142 per call that actually shows up. And then let's say our conversion rate on the sale, like of the people who show up, how many do we actually get to buy? Let's say that's 20%. Again, like pretty normal numbers. 20% is not anything to write home about. It's pretty normal. So what we're seeing now is that you have to pay $714 in ad spend in order to get one sale, right? So knowing what these numbers are makes it much easier to put together a budget, to know how much you want to spend in your ads. Now, let's look at how that looks in terms of like unit profit. So what's your product price? Let's say that your price of your product is $5,000. If that's the case, what we got here, assuming all of these numbers are accurate, is that you spend $714 to get one sale. And for that one sale, you make $5,000 in revenue. So that leaves you a profit of $4,285, which is equivalent to a 7x ROAS. So you're getting for every $714 you're spending in ad spend, you're getting a 7 times return on your ad spend. Okay, so now let's in order to find the budgets, let's put some revenue targets. Like how much revenue do you want to make per month? So let's say that we want to make $20,000 a month in revenue. We'd put 20,000 in here. And then it's going to fill in the rest of this. So that means if we want to make $20,000 per month, that means we have to make about $5,000 per week, or $714 per day. And then in terms of number of sales, right, at $5,000, if we want $20,000, that's 4 sales, right? Which means that we have to make 1 sale every week and a fraction of a sale every day. Now, this is the important part here. How much do we have to spend in ad costs in order to hit these targets? If we want to make $20,000 in revenue per month, we have to spend $2,857 in ads to hit that $20,000 in revenue. That $2,800 in ads is $714 a week, or $102 a day, which YouTube ads is calculated like they ask you for a daily budget. So the daily budget that you would put into your YouTube ads dashboard would be $102, right? And if you have multiple ads or multiple campaigns running and you want to split it between those, let's say that you have 2 campaigns running, then you would be like $51 each, or just split it up in a way that the total is $102. And then this leaves us with a total gross profit of $17,000 a month, $4,000 a week, $612 a day. So if we want, by the way, if you want to, because ultimately the profit number is really much more significant than the revenue number, because the profit is the money that you actually get to keep. And when I say gross profit, I mean the profit after ad spend. So you might have other expenses, like if you need to spend some money to deliver the product, like you send somebody something in the mail, for example, then that would be, you'd have to take that out as well, right? That wouldn't be included in this calculation here. Or if you have to, like you have a monthly software expense or something, then that would be, you have to take that out as well. But this is just profit, like the revenue minus ad spend is gross profit. So if you're, and this is the important number, right? Because this is the money that you actually take home. And there are a lot of businesses that'll make, like I've talked to business owners that are making like multiple 6 figures a month in revenue, but then their gross profit is like 1% of their revenue. Whereas this is like 90%, more or less, like 85%, which is really, really good, assuming we don't have any other big like expenses here. So if you want to target by, like do your targets by gross profit rather than by revenue, then you can just kind of mess with this a little bit. So let's say that I want to make my actual target is 20,000 in gross profit rather than 20,000 in revenue. If that's the case, then I can just mess with this revenue target number until I get close to the gross profit. So let's say I do 25, right? That's 1 extra sale. Well, now I'm at 21,000 gross profit. So maybe if I want 20,000 in profit, then maybe 25,000 in revenue is a better target, right? In which case, now instead of just 102 or whatever a day, now I'm up to 128 a day, right? That I have to spend in ad spend. So how this works for you is going to vary, right? Like the numbers in these green boxes are going to be different from business to business, and they'll depend on what your business is, who your audience is. They'll also depend on how good your process is, right? Which, by the way, if you'd like to have me build out this entire process for you, that's something that I'm offering right now. If you're interested, just click the link below. I'll put the link in the description where you can apply. Of course, this is a lot of work on my end, so it's definitely subject to availability. But as of recording this video, it's something that I'm offering at the moment. But anyway, let's take a look at this and mess with some of the assumptions here. So let's say that your lead cost, well, first of all, what determines the lead cost here? The lead cost depends on a few things. So for one thing, it depends on how competitive is your market. So if you are advertising to a particular type of person that is very in demand, and maybe there's a small number, this kind of gets back to supply and demand. If you remember from economics class, that the more of the people that there are, then like the more of your target audience, that's higher supply, which means that reaching them will be cheaper because there's more of them. The fewer they are, the lower the supply, which means the more expensive they will be. So if you sell Coca-Cola, let's say, and your audience is absolutely everybody on the face of the planet, then the supply is very big and your advertising costs are going to be relatively cheap. Now, if you sell a product that's only for orthodontists, let's say, and only for orthodontists that have a practice with 10 or more employees, let's make it even smaller, and only within Florida. So orthodontists with 10 or more employees only in Florida, that's a very small number of people that are going to meet that description. And so because it's a smaller supply, it means it's going to be more expensive to advertise to those people. So if that's the case, probably your cost per lead is going to be higher than $10. Now, there's the demand side of this as well, which is how competitive is it? How many other people are trying to advertise to your target audience? The more other people that you're competing with for the same audience, the higher those ad costs are going to be. And when I say competing with, by the way, I mean how many other people are running YouTube ads and targeting the same people as you. So if you're targeting like ultra high net worth individuals, for example, the people that have the most money, well, a lot of people want to advertise to people who have money because they're the easiest sales, right? They can pay the most. So that's going to be competitive. And so that's going to raise your cost per lead. Whereas if you are advertising to people that are unemployed and taking welfare, then there's a lot of them and they are not particularly desirable for most advertisers. So your cost per lead is going to be lower. Now, there's also the matter of how good is your ad. If your ad sucks, then your cost per lead could be much higher than this, right? So like, let's add a zero. Let's say that your cost per lead is $100. Well, now all of a sudden your profit is negative, right? You have to spend $7,000 to get one sale and you only make $5,000 back. So if you find yourself in a situation like this, then something has to change. Either you have to do a better job of advertising and get your cost per lead down, or you could try increasing your price. So maybe it's impossible to get your lead cost down because you're only advertising to high net worth individuals and those people are expensive to get to. Okay, well maybe you charge $15,000 then, right? Well, all of a sudden now you're getting a 2.1x ROAS. You're doubling your ad spend, so that could work. Now and another thing we could do here too is like go back to 5,000. Another thing we can do here too is figure out, okay, like where's my break-even point? So if I do, let's say if I get a lead for $50, so well, first of all, at 100, I'm negative, right? I'm losing money if I'm having to pay $100 per lead. Let's say if I'm paying 50. Okay, now I'm positive. I'm a little bit positive, 1.4x ROAS. Okay, what if I go to like 60? Now I'm 1.2x. I'm still positive. What if I try 70? 70, I'm exactly 1x, zero profit. Like I spend 5,000, I make 5,000. So this is my break-even point. I have to get my lead cost below $70. If I can get my lead cost below $70, then I am going to make money. If I don't, then I'm going to lose money. Right? And in order to break even, I'm spending $893 a day. Whereas again, if I'm only spending $10 per lead, then I only have to spend $128 a day and I'm making way more profit. Or I mean, infinitely more profit, because with the break even, I'm making zero profit. And then you can do the same thing with these numbers, right? So let's say that your funnel kind of sucks and you're only getting 5% booked calls. Then all of a sudden, with all the other numbers the same, Well, your ROAS went down to 3.5x, which is actually still pretty good. Like this leaves, you can tell that if you do this right, you leave yourself quite a lot of margin for error. Or let's take that back to 10%. Let's say that your show rate sucks and your show rate's like 40%. It's really bad. Now you're at 4x ROAS. Let's say that you also aren't really great at sales and you only close 10%. Well, now you're still at like 2x ROAS. So you can mess around with this, especially if you already have data. Like you already know that your show rate is 60%, let's say. Then you just write in 60%, percent sign just once, and then like that'll give you your numbers. Of course, you gotta like, if you're not running YouTube ads already, then you may not be sure what your cost per lead is. Of course, you have to do it first, but you might have a good idea of what these other numbers are. So you can figure that out. And you'll notice that like in these numbers, it's telling me I have to spend $298 a day on ads in order to hit my 25K a month revenue target. So if I'm just starting out on the ads, I might not want to spend $298 a day. That sounds like kind of a lot. You can start more conservative than this. Like this is the kind of like the final destination target. You don't have to start at $298 a day, $8,000 a month. Like that's a lot of money, right? You don't have to start there. What you can do is you can start with smaller amounts of money just to figure out what these numbers are, right? Like figure out what your cost per lead is. If you don't know what your cost per lead is, then run some ads with the small budget, get a few leads, and that'll give you an idea of what your cost per lead is. Then you can come back here, you can plug it into the calculator and say, okay, well, I'm getting $12 cost per lead, right? And so that will inform you what to do with the rest of the process. And then once you get like a certain number of leads, you start to notice the number of booked calls that you get from those leads. And you can say, oh, this is 11%. My booked call rate. Okay. And then once you get a few calls booked, then you start to notice the show rate. You can say, okay, I'm getting a 50% show rate these days. And then once you get a few showed calls, then you can get an idea of, okay, I'm closing at 25% actually, right? And so that will allow you to fill in these numbers with the actual numbers without really taking a big risk, because you're spending only a little bit of money per day. And you're feeling out exactly what this looks like. And then once you got these filled in, like you got the numbers set, then you can say, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to spend $156 a day, and that's going to be what hits my target. So give that a try. If you would like to get a copy of this calculator, I will put a link in the description or in the first comment where you can get this for free. And if you would like to talk to me about building this out for you, then I'll put a link in the description about that as well.